Okay. Hello, everyone.
I made it.
You did. I was just thinking like if there is another way to get you in here. We are already live. Uh,
Hello. Nice to meet you all.
just an FYI. And yeah, sorry for the delay. Sorry for the classic technical hiccups.
It's
Uh,
soon. Can you do not the first time?
yes. Okay, but given we're late, I'm kicking things off right away. I'm gonna do a super quick intro and then I'm handing it over to you. Um, Let me share my screen. And here we are. Hi, everyone. My name is MJ. I'm the co-founder of ZenABM. With me, we have Max from Kamrat, who was kind enough to help us some time ago. And that's how we kind of met with our AI chat. And Max has a great presentation. I am told by Emilia that one of the best for this webinar today. So the bar is high. That's all I'm going to say. The expectations
No
were big,
pressure.
at least for me. Yeah, three words about an ABM before we kick things off. It's a tool for running ABM campaigns on LinkedIn. It gives you guys deep insight into all of your data, company level, campaign level, job titles, intents out of the box, and account scoring, entire customer journey with deal attribution, how many impressions the deal had before they were opened, after they were opened, and before they were closed, etc. Analytics out of the box with your pipe, with entire analytics of your pipeline, how much you're opening, how much you're closing, what's your ROAS and pipeline per dollar. And on top of it, Zena, our AI agents with access to all of the data to cross reference it, combine it for you, find inefficiencies, etc. With code Bootcamp, 10% off till the end of the bootcamp. So come try it out, 37-day free trial. You don't need to put your credit card in. Test it out. And with that being said, I will ask everyone to ask your questions on chat to Max or via the Q&A. I already see we have some in Q&A, and we will be answering them live as we go. All right.
Lovely. Thank you. I'm just gonna go ahead and share my screen real quick and then I'll jump right into the presentation. Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Lovely. Cool. So, hi everyone. Super nice not seeing you all today, but you seeing me. So, gonna have a good hour here. My name is Max. I myself worked for LinkedIn in Ireland for 2.5 years. Actually, I started in sales and then later went to the marketing solutions. So I know the ins of LinkedIn, but now I of course also know the out outs, whatever is outside of LinkedIn. And those two things differ quite a lot. Especially if you've had contact with LinkedIn account managers before, you probably know that, some opinions differ from what you hear online. And for me, I have this very unique position to combine both point of views and really like deliver service to clients that is not biased and very objective. So I'm self-employed. I've been self-employed for more than 2 years in the LinkedIn ads sphere. And now I'm really like more focused on strategic, bigger projects of LinkedIn ads implementation because there's many things that people get wrong when it comes to LinkedIn. That's what we're gonna tackle today. So today is a little bit more of a more hands-on session. So the first two chapters are a little bit of a probably repetition of what you've heard before very quickly and a little bit more of a theory. And then we're gonna jump right into the targeting. There will be a lot of focus on targeting today. Why? Because everyone gets it wrong. That's one of the most, or not, or even the most important thing when it comes to LinkedIn targeting. Top three for sure, but everyone underestimates it. But you mess up targeting and you mess up your whole campaign and you waste the budget. That's just what it is. So big focus there. And then, of course, budget bidding, campaign settings. I was told by Emilia that it's a lot what we have to go through today, so I'm trying to be not too quick. But if I am, just let me know, ask your questions right away. And of course, you get the materials later on. I also have a more of a condensed version of all of this. So if you're interested in that, of course, I can send it over. And yeah, just shoot your questions anytime. So, getting started with the non-negotiables, what do I mean by that? I mean the mindset, the setup that you have to have, the expectations, the things that you need to have in order for even to consider LinkedIn ads. So the audience is at the core of everything. Basically, as I mentioned already, if you mess up the audience, everything else is really pointless. This is not Meta, this is LinkedIn. So you need to really nail your settings. You need to nail your targeting. The algorithm is not good. The algorithm is not going to find the right people for you. You need to provide the algorithm with a specific yet broad enough targeting as you can, and then focus on high frequency and audience penetration. But we're gonna go into that later, but really like the audience is everything. The messaging as well, of course, understand your clients. These are all basics, but you wouldn't believe how many people don't know their proper messaging. They live in a bubble. They have confirmation bias of how good they think their product is, and they don't really try to find out what actually makes the audience convert. You need real clarity around what you're selling and why the audience should care, and you got to communicate that with LinkedIn. Generic USPs don't cut it anymore, especially in 2026. You gotta be creative and you gotta have great messaging. That's it sounds basic, but you really need to focus on that. And that brings me to my next point is great creative. Um, LinkedIn is a content delivery machine, as I like to call it. It's a great, great way to nurture people, to keep the touch points up every month. But for that, you need great creative, great content, right? So you need to test it. You need to react quickly. Don't just create creatives and then have them run for like ever. You need to be flexible so that you can react to the data that you get. Don't be shy, be creative and bold when it comes to thought leader ads, but also to be it conversation ads or regular static ads, like single image ads. If you blend in too much, that's a problem. So use different formats and don't rely on just one. And then a holistic view instead of a linear system. Yeah, linear is out. I don't know if it's ever been in, but there's no step-by-step process of like getting cold people to convert, like you just with your campaigns, basically. People can very much also convert in a cold audience, to a demo and in a warm audience as well, of course. But don't think of it like, okay, leading them through the funnel and at some point you make them convert. That's not how it works. You got to keep the touch points high and you got to have the right content in front of the right people. It's actually very basic and don't complicate it. Don't make it too complicated. Right. And then strategic integration of LinkedIn. Make sure to, of course, place it where it belongs. What the sales do, any other channels that you might have. Make sure that you put it strategically with the budget you have, with the expectations you have, and don't treat it as something separate to everything as you're doing. And then, of course, multi-touch attribution. I think you talked about that already, but don't focus on last touch. Really, like look at the whole funnel, look at the whole like basically everything, the whole account. Also, what ZenABM is doing, of course, like look at the different engagement rates and whatever you have, and get a holistic picture. You need lots of touch points for lots of people to make them in the end talk to you.
We
So
have a
planning,
question about
yes.
target account list. The question is, how do you validate your ABM account list is actually sales ready, not just ICP on paper? Any advice on this?
So which accounts to choose or
Yeah,
how to know if they're sales ready, like basically so that I can send them to sales. Is that what
probably
you're asking?
I would understand that Pratap asks like what makes a good account list, not just like good looking, but actually good. Is any specific advice or tricks on this? I guess that's the question.
Yeah, so if I understand correctly, it actually depends a little bit. It's good that you mentioned that because maybe I can answer it with these slides. Basically, you want to jump into the ABM strategy when you plan the campaigns, and you want to understand what is my goal, right? Do I want new pipeline? Do I want acceleration of active pipeline accounts, expansion like upselling to existing clients, retention? That could be with current client accounts. So first of all, it really depends on what you're trying to achieve with your campaigns and with your ABM strategy. And based on that, again, like of course, if you want new pipeline, you could use close lost accounts that you weren't touched already and they are relevant, but now you want to try one more time in a sense, or try more strategically. And then you know these are validated already. Like I'd say like focus on quick wins if you have to choose anyways, where you know for sure, like you talk to them or like whatever, you know, these are relevant. And then be more strategic with like, yeah, maybe also upselling does it for you to current clients, you know what I mean? Things like that. But generally the list could really be anything. Like, does this answer your question? I mean, how
Uh,
to really get started quickly or
I hope we this does answer the question. If you have a follow-up, just post it again on chat and we will try to dive deeper. Yeah, I don't think
yeah.
we have any other questions for now.
Because that's I would say that's also a broad topic of like how to really like create ABM lists and the different factors that are in there, you know. Of course, it could go deeper, but this is like designed an overview to like really get you started very quickly, of like what you might have already.
Yep.
Right. And then, so planning. So the commercial objective, then what runs alongside LinkedIn. So basically, are you planning outbound sequences, which of course you should. When would those be triggered? I think you talked about that already. What is considered an interest stage ABM account, for instance, you know, what is your retargeting system, the content engine conversion moments, like different things that you need to figure out before you even start LinkedIn, you know, like your whole plan basically. Because what people do a lot is they start with LinkedIn and don't look at the overall ABM strategy, for instance, or they don't look at everything else they need to do to then use LinkedIn as a tool and then get to where they want, you know. And then, of course, sales alignment. This is a big one. It's not, you know, step-by-step process like how it used to be like, you know, marketing brings leads and then and then sales like contacts those leads. It's really like you want to work in a tandem and you want to work together with the same framework. You share data, you have engagement routing, like define who follows up, which accounts, at what point do you want to be followed up, basically, you know, how many touch points should they have, how many impressions, what kind of signs do you want to see so that sales actually gets a trigger and then follows up, be it an automation, be it SDRs, things like that, and define a reporting cadence, which you also kind of want to align with the content that you have on LinkedIn, right? Um, and then here as well, that maybe also answers a little bit the question we had earlier. Analyzing data you already have, you know, LinkedIn campaign manager history, CRM data, former pipeline, current pipeline, sales activity, analytics. Just answer the question, where does your revenue come from? Where do the conversions come from? You know, what do you want more of? What do you want less of? And what content brings the results? And how can you deliver the results quickly? Like, as I said, churn customers, close lost. So really also analyze the data that you already have to understand how to find the right ICPs, the right accounts. You know what I mean? Most of the times it's really historical data and the analysis that you need there to get to an answer there. And right, and then you also, of course, I know talked about platforms like Clay, how to create those lists, and there's also a way actually to just use the regular company filters on LinkedIn and not use lists, which I wouldn't recommend. I'll just touch upon that a little bit later, how you can use LinkedIn filters to not start with lists, but do a little bit of prospecting there if you really don't want to, if you really don't have lists or you want to do a little bit of prospecting and see what you get out of that. And then lastly of this part, nailing down your ICP. You want to reach a full buying group inside each target account, of course, but don't segment too much. Segment strategically, not excessively, right? So who are the distinct personas and how can you reach them? What are their needs? What do they do? And build their persona profiles from real data. Again, analyze everything that you have and find out where they work, their top, like what parts of the company, what are their pain points, the seniority levels, the skills, everything you can find out to determine, okay, can we pull them in one campaign? What kind of content do they need? Do they have separate ways of communication that I need to deliver? So really like be precise there, but don't over segment. Like find a segmentation that works for you, that is not too complicated and fits your budget. I know that sounds very broad, but there's so many different ways of combinations there. It really depends on your particular situation and definitely also your budget. Just a little bit of a guideline when segmentation can be relevant. The personas do need different messages, offers, content formats, geography, touch upon it later, but different time zones can also be a problem with LinkedIn ads. Again, we touch upon that later, but just targeting the whole planet can be a problem. Different internal structures, buying committees, conversion rates of MQL to SQS, like different factors, but you need to find one that is most important to you, that you can then segment. Here just a little bit example ICP. We don't need to go into detail there. You get the slides later, but just so that you see the titles, the skills, decision criteria, and key concerns. A very simple, easy mapping of how that can look. The titles and skills and decision criteria, these things are important for the targeting on LinkedIn because we can know titles, of course, but then also the skills that we can use as well for the targeting. And the decision criteria is, of course, for the content, like you want to nail it as exact as you can just to plan in the end your campaigns. And the same here. So we have here the decision makers and the users as example. So this is everything before you start the campaigns. Again, the non-negotiables and the planning. I think you heard many things of that before if you've attended sessions before that. Most of the times are actually when I get with clients, they want to start with targeting in the campaigns right away, but they forget these two parts. So that's why, this is very much part of the campaign planning. And if you don't have any questions,
There
I'd
is
say
one
is
question is, do you have
okay.
like a template to fill that kind of like covers all the things that should be prepared?
Yes, I have that. I have you can add me on LinkedIn or I have a QR link later. Just add me and I'll send it over. I have all this in short. So, so yeah, I have that for you.
I think that answers the question. Cool.
Yeah, yeah. Right. So now we're gonna be a little bit more hands-on, which is also more interesting, and we start with targeting. So as I said, very, very important. I don't know if most people know the Audience Hub. If you don't, please get to know it. It's the most important thing when it comes to the campaign setup because it enables you to basically have a very granular overview of the targeting filters that you use, of the audience that you create. But then basically you can see who is part of this audience. So I have it explained here. If you don't know where it is, you go to plan, audiences, saved, and then create audience. And what you basically get is a super interesting overview of the whole targeting pool. If you use company filters and no lists, then you would of course see interesting like who do you target with the filters that you use, like what companies are part of the pool. But then of course with the ICP filters, what job titles do they have? But then what skills do they have? What job functions are they part of? Where are they basically? The locations. The percentage locations, like 20% are, I don't know, 20% are in DACH and 30% are in the UK. So you get super, super great overview and you know what you're targeting. We get to that later, but you really like a filter is not one, it's oftentimes not what you think that you're targeting. So use the Audience Hub and create your audience in there. Again, we'll touch upon it later, but that's the most important thing when you start targeting the campaigns or like creating the targeting audience. Adding your list, so there's a manual sync and an automatic sync via matched audiences. When I say adding your lists, I mean the company lists. If you have never done it before, then this is how you do it. Again, I have it explained here how you get there. To for a list to make sense or to be usable on LinkedIn, you need at least the LinkedIn URL of a company page, right? Because what LinkedIn does is like you upload a list of companies and or you sign it via HubSpot, for instance, and then LinkedIn needs to match this list to LinkedIn profiles of the companies. And it can only do so properly if you include the LinkedIn company page URL. So because we're aiming for a match rate of 90% and more, 95%. And if you don't include that, then the match rate will A, be way lower, and B, it will Probably be wrong, most of it. So I've seen lots of mismatches because people don't add the company page URL. So keep that in mind, especially when you add new companies. And once you do that, check manually after that the companies are matched properly. Yeah, this is how you do it. There's also a company list template. You just click on it and then you have the CSV file and it shows you the template. There's different things that you have to fill out. It tells you like 5 or 6 different things. The minimum, as I said, is the LinkedIn company page URL. The name would also be good, and the website, but you don't need to fill out all of these things, but definitely the URL. Can't stress it enough. And then you can have a look on, of course, like once you have the lists uploaded, you can segment by list within the campaign manager, meaning that you basically see engagement level per company, their impressions, paid, organic, and so on a list basis, which is super interesting. And you get that already for free. Even like even if you don't do campaigns, you could upload lists and then already see the organic impressions and engagements that you get from those companies without spending a single euro, you know. So super, lots of insights already on LinkedIn. I mentioned these as well, the targeting filters. What do I mean by that? It's like targeting by company, industry, and company size without using lists. Not that important today, but just so that you've heard it. You can use it. It's just less accurate just because the companies choose their industries themselves on their company pages, meaning that Amazon could be part of different industries, but tiered software development, especially the bigger the companies get. So you have a way less accuracy than when you use lists, and you need an extra layer of optimization because then you don't only optimize the ICP filters or like the demographics that you get, but you also have to optimize the companies, meaning that you will get lots of companies that are irrelevant, and then you have to exclude them while you go. And yeah, it's a little bit less recommended than company lists, but it's a great way of prospecting, meaning that, if you again like want to find new companies on LinkedIn within this industry, you can try and like go prospecting, and then as you see, you get engagement data per company, which is also an interesting way of maybe finding new companies or like being a little bit broader. Though again, usually more of a budget waste if you don't do it right. And then ICP filters. So basically, we talked about the buyer groups, and there's different ways of using ICP filters on LinkedIn. You probably hear a lot about job titles and job functions. So for broader targeting, I recommend job functions and job title exclusions, or job functions seniority and job title exclusions. So job functions are broader than job functions are broader than job titles. Job functions could be marketing, job title could be head of marketing, right? If you combine it with seniority, so job functions, seniority, VP, so VP and marketing, then still it's not a job title, but it's like, VP level within the marketing departments. You want to do job title exclusions because again, it's a little bit broader. So whatever job titles are not relevant, you want to exclude right away. And while you go with the campaigns and you get data, you do the job title exclusions. Again, this is why the audience hub is so important, because you see right away when you do the job functions and seniority or even the job titles, you see right away, okay, what people are we actually reaching, right? And what people can we already exclude? So this is, and if you don't use the audience hub, you don't see that even. You need to wait for the campaign data to come in and already spend money and then start with the exclusions.
I
Narrowed,
I have to
yeah,
stop you here for because we have two questions and I have to plug in that we recently launched exclusions in ZenABM. So you can with one click do like blanket exclusions on all of your campaigns, for example, for your competitors or specific job titles. So plug completed the
great
question.
timing.
What are the super titles?
Great question. We'll have that in 1 or 2 slides covered
Okay.
for you.
Okay. The other one is about skills. Do you recommend including skills in targeting?
Yes, it's a very good question. I would definitely, so if you wanna work with job functions, right, and seniority, which oftentimes I do myself, because it really depends, if you have a smaller company list, for instance, and then you use job titles, then it could be very comprised, or like this is one case and the audience is very small and it doesn't really make sense. Like you have a feeling basically that the job titles don't cover all the relevant people, you know. Then I would work with job functions and seniority. And then on top of that, the problem is that it can then become very broad very quickly, right? And then if you have a jump of like, you know, times three or something, and your budget does not fit that, or you feel like it's then too broad, then add the skills. So it would probably be easier to explain that with an example, but just a rule of thumb for you is your audience is your audience. Do not make it bigger than it has to be, and don't make it too small. It's, you know, your audience is your audience. Be very strategic, plug those things into the audience hub, analyze your audience in there, and you need to know your audience or you know your audience, so you will see if it kind of reflects who you want to target, right? And based on that, make a decision. I hope that answers the questions.
Yeah,
It's
sounds good
it's
to me.
oftentimes a it depends, you know, it's oftentimes there's no one path, you know. Whoever tells you like, you know, this is how you do it and just like that, then don't do it. Like there's different ways of doing it, but these are the rules of thumb basically.
I would guess here myself that maybe some specific skills that would be to certain positions. I don't know, maybe for accountants that would be something, some specific software if they put it there, or for like developers, maybe some AWS if you are looking to target like DevOps people, etc.
Precisely.
Yeah,
Precisely. That's a very good point. Exactly. So if you have specific software, more niche things, you know, niche skills, then 100%, like, you know, that's why I said it really depends a little bit on your case. But yeah, I generally recommend them. Yeah.
awesome.
And we get to the audience penetration and why audience size matters so much a little bit later. So now coming to the job titles, you already mentioned the question, what are super titles? Well, basically, it's not like you put in a job title in LinkedIn and then you just target literally those people who have it on their profile. It's more that LinkedIn creates super titles, meaning like similar titles that LinkedIn considers similar enough to be part of this group of titles. So these are super titles, and some super titles can be super big. So, for instance, marketing specialist, anything specialist really is usually super, super big, right? Or here, VP of engineering. So the titles you want to reach when you put in titles you want to reach when you put in VP of engineering is VP of engineering, senior director of engineering, and so on. Like these titles you also get if you put in VP of engineering job title in LinkedIn. But you also get engineering specialists, infotech specialists, construction specialists, things like that. So because of this super title concept, you get lots of relevant and irrelevant people depending on the super title that you have or that you plug in. Um, and lots of people don't know that. They think they're like, okay, this is who we target. They just like copy one on one the the usual job titles they target, but then LinkedIn translation is different, you know. So you need to be very aware of what you do here. And this is just a great example here. Again, use the audience hub. But here, what I did, I put in marketing director, vice president marketing, head of marketing, blah, blah, blah. And on the left-hand side, you see what LinkedIn actually classifies under those titles, right? So you see head of marketing, but you also see 100 marketing specialist. So 100% of the people that are classified as head of marketing are also falling under the marketing specialist super title. So I tried this. In this case, I had an audience of 20,000 with these job titles. I had 20,000. But marketing specialist, if you plug that in, I had more than 100,000 users. You know so that means 100% of the people of head of marketing are considered marketing specialists. But this in itself is just a small percentage of what is actually the super title marketing specialist. So this sounds a little bit complicated, but once you actually apply it, you spot the super titles more easily. Just make sure to use the audience hub and look on the left-hand side, who are we actually reaching? I recommend just plugging in one title, just like for instance, head of marketing, and then you know exactly on the left side who you see. Because if you put more, or who you get, because if you put more, then of course you don't know which title actually influences the left side more. I see these topics now that I talk about it. I'm like, oh, this part of it sounds so abstract if you don't do it. But that's how I felt at the start when I started with LinkedIn. Everyone talked about super titles and things like that, and also abstract, but actually, hopefully, this guide helps you a little bit. And of course, feel free to reach out afterwards if anything is too complicated. Right. So the next targeting, so this is job titles. Usually, as I said, we do job titles and job title exclusions. You cannot combine them with job functions or seniority. Again, more narrow targeting. The broader targeting is with job functions and seniority. What is seniority? Basically, seniority is, entry level, director, manager, things like that. Also here, you gotta be very careful because these are just some examples of what LinkedIn classifies as senior and what LinkedIn classifies as basically as entry level, for instance. So usually you're best if you use VP, like if you want to target T levels, CXO, VP, owner, it really depends. Senior is really good. Manager is already a little bit lower. So like these are the ones that I usually use. Entry, I don't use a lot. It's just that you might get entry in your demographics. When once you start the campaigns, you might get entry a lot of impressions there. But that doesn't mean that it's entry people like interns. Some people are classified as entry, but they're actually not entry. So be a little bit careful there, not with inclusions, but really with exclusions. We get to that later. I would not recommend excluding seniorities, just exclude job titles, but this is an explanation to why that is. And this is also a little bit an explanation to how seniority works. So again, be careful here as well. Use the audience hub and see what you get on the left side, just to get to a point. And here you have some examples. Right, just like here the combination, job functions and job seniorities entry. And then you see it's entry, but you still get software engineer or like engineers to classified as entry, but it's not really necessarily an entry, right? So be a little bit careful there. This combination has 12 plus years of experience. So you see like there's lots of non-entry people in there. Yeah. Touching upon contact lists, I don't know if you guys heard about contact lists. It's basically uploading people and not companies. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that because the match rates are low. So basically, say you have a couple of decision makers in certain companies that you want to target and you just upload their names. That's problematic because you cannot use their LinkedIn profile URL. You have to use their email addresses, and their email addresses have to basically match the email that they have on their LinkedIn profile. Otherwise, LinkedIn does not match their names to their actual profiles. That usually results in a very low match rate, and that's why I wouldn't recommend it. Also, I wouldn't recommend it because people change their jobs and those lists get outdated very quickly. There's some niche use cases that might be useful, such as say webinar signups or very, very particular campaigns that don't run for that long, like you can try, but generally I would not use them. Yeah, coming to geography, I touched upon it a little bit earlier. Your takeaway here, if you can, try to not have lots of different time zones in one targeting pool, because for instance, if the budget is gone in one time zone, then LinkedIn is not balancing it out, right? So it could be gone in the US before Europe even wakes up. So be a little bit careful there. Of course, I said earlier, don't over segment. If you feel like that's still okay, and then if the audience is not too big, then you can try and then analyze the data and see again in the demographics, is the US, for instance, getting way more budget than Europe? Is it balanced out? But if you can, I would at least target by continent or time zone and not go berserk on like targeting the whole planet there. Um, Yeah. And then also, of course, it gets a little bit harder to interpret the data that you have. And honestly, cultures differ as well, you know, and again, that depends strongly on your product, but you can't be that specific with content and messaging if you need to have different messaging per culture. Sometimes it doesn't really matter because, you know, these are your ICPs or these are like the decision makers and they don't differ much depending on the culture. So you see, it really depends. This is more like a technical thing as well with the budget distribution since you cannot really influence it. And then lastly, the language. Always use English. It always contains the local language as well. So English in DACH would also contain German, except when it comes to message ads and conversation ads. For that, you actually need to put an English campaign if you want to reach English profiles, and then you want to put a German campaign, for instance, if you want to reach German speaking profiles or like profiles that are in German, right? Other than that, always use English. Creative language strategy. We usually see better engagement rates with local languages. So like, you know, use German creators in Germany. Though, again, if you have a limited budget pool and you have limited audience size, English is fine as well. And then you can combine more countries. It makes it easier, but just so that you know. All right. Are you tired yet with all the targeting? As you can see, it is quite a lot to go through.
Yeah, there is art to it, obviously, but I don't think anyone is tired.
Yeah, yeah. No, I really like went berserk on that a little bit, but we're coming to an end closer and closer. We're now at exclusion filters, and these are also super, super important because many people don't know how they work. So when you build the audiences, as I mentioned already, see on the left side who do you reach, right? And then use exclusion filters already. Like again, I would only do job titles most of the times. You can also do with skills, things like that, but the main thing will be job titles that you exclude. So exclude those, click on apply, check on the left side again, see how the audience changes, right? Then company level exclusions if you don't work with clean lists, which I wouldn't do, but still, or if you again work with company filters and not lists, use company level exclusions like customers, competitors, partners, you know, pipeline if you feel like this is irrelevant to content to them, things like that. Keep in mind though that the moment you exclude a company, then basically you exclude the like if you have a relevant user and this user has two active jobs and one job is at a company that you want to target and one job is at a company you don't want to target. If you exclude the company that you don't want to target, you exclude the user altogether. So the exclusion has a higher hierarchy basically than an inclusion. The same is true for job functions, job titles, like or seniority, as we mentioned earlier, and seniority is pretty broad. So if you exclude entry seniority, but you want to reach some sort of specialist, you know, or an engineer, as we saw earlier, you will exclude all these people, no matter what you do with your inclusion. So be very, very careful what you exclude. And I would never use like big metrics or big filters, broad filters as exclusions, because then again, you exclude too many people. Right, here's some examples as well, job types, job seekers as well. There's member traits, job seekers. So that can also be very helpful to not to filter out the people that are actually just looking for a job, especially when it comes to website visitor retargeting people. And as I said, yeah, user level exclusions override inclusions. Here's the hierarchy as well, just explained. Impression caps. So basically, what can happen is that in certain instances, bigger companies might take up lots of your budget, like get more impressions than the rest, you know, like say the top five, top eight companies get way more impressions than the rest of your target audience. And so it's very imbalanced. You know, sometimes companies have a bigger chunk of your targeting pool. I think, yeah, I think you don't have it yet in ZenABM, right? That you can exclude. that I think
Not
you're working
yet.
with?
We're waiting for the APA access, so unfortunately.
Okay. But here's a workaround in the meantime that you can use on LinkedIn to kind of exclude these people, like just like exclude companies that get too many impressions without you having to do much manual labor. So basically, you want to calculate an impression cap. So basically, you go into the company overview and you put the time frame 7 days, view the last 7 days. Then you want to see how many impressions did each company have in those last 7 days. And if 10 companies get 3,000 impressions, just as an example, while most companies got 800, you set a cap at 1,000 for the 7 day period, right? So once companies have reached 1,000 impressions, they will be excluded within the time frame. So you make sure that it's more balanced, the impressions and the money that you spend. Then you create a dynamic list based on that, right? So you create this dynamic list that all the time like gets the impressions in from your campaigns and automatically basically excludes the companies that are more than 1,000 impressions. You save it as a company list, and then you basically, as you can see here, date range 7 days. You have from 1,000 impressions on, companies become part of this list, and then you exclude this list, if that makes sense. So this is a dynamic list. You don't have to exclude the companies manually by yourself every couple of days. And here I explain how you actually then add this dynamic list to your targeting to keep it more balanced. Yeah. So super important. Always check your demographics and build those impression caps. Last slide for this very long chapter, retargeting. I'm not going to go into detail there.
We have one question about impression capping, I guess, and is this, if I
Thank
only have
God.
3 people from one company, should I still have like 1,000+ impressions? I assume this is about impression capping.
Oh, do you mean like, are you referencing to the penetration in a sense? Like, do you mean like 1,000 impressions?
Yeah, like maybe the better question to rephrase it, I guess, is it realistic to expect if you only target 3 people from a company to get 1,000 impressions from them?
That's a good that you asked that because this is just an example. This example is just like if you have a case where a company gets 3,000 impressions, or like your 10 biggest companies get 3,000 and the others get like around 800, then you set a cap at 1,000 just so that the big company does not get, or that the big companies don't get more than 1,000 impressions. Because as you say you have a company with just 3 people, then this company will probably not see lots of impressions because those bigger ones take up all the impressions. So it's not a guideline for every campaign that 1,000 impressions in 7 days is like the cap you should go for. It really depends on the case.
Sounds good.
You just want to make sure that all the companies in your list have the highest chance of getting impressions all the time. Um, right. So retargeting, just for you as a reminder, it's not about squeezing intent, but reinforcement. This is going to be the next chapter, which will be very interesting. Namely, we want to keep the audience penetration high, and it also touches a little bit upon this, how many impressions should every company get in certain time frame, how many touch points. So we're going to cover that as well. But retargeting is really to keep the touch points high, to deliver content to the companies and not to lead them through a funnel as we always used to learn, and to really like again like deliver the right content. It's your testing environment as well. It's smaller audiences. It's cheaper to like keep the touch points high and to test different things that you can then scale for your cold audience, for instance. It identify what resonates and scale the winners to your cold audience and iterate creatives continuously, and have a mixture of zero-click content and click-driving content. So consumption on platform, which is very big at this point on LinkedIn, but then also, of course, you want to drive people to your websites and drive action. And targeting in itself should be another presentation. So we're finally done with targeting. Hope you enjoyed that. But again, super important. I don't know, should I stop at 10 sharp?
No, I think we can overrun it a couple of minutes if we need to.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to be more efficient with the next chapters.
It's good.
But
It's good.
again, you get all the you get all the slides. So starting with budget and penetration. So I'm not going to go much into detail of this with this formula now. This is a formula I like to use when I start new campaigns. I know Emilia also had a calculation with you guys and walked you through how she calculates the budget. There's really different ways to do it. If you want to be simplistic about it and you don't have any idea of how to kind of like, get your LinkedIn ads budget right, then this is a formula you can use. And then once you have the campaigns running, you can optimize on the go and see how much budget you actually need. But for this formula to make sense, we need the audience size, we need the estimated monthly reachable audience, the estimated CPM, the frequency goal we have per person per month, and the cold budget share to the retargeting budget share, basically. So basically what I do is, again, say audience size is 40,000 people. What do I mean by estimated monthly reachable audience? It's basically just like half of the people realistically of the audience, like say 20,000 users, we can realistically reach per month. Lots of profiles out there. People don't log in all the time. People log in once a year. And honestly, also lots of profiles are just inactive, but still there. So we kind of want to calculate how many people can we reach per month. And I'd say 50% is realistic. Could also be slightly more. So these are the metrics we need. And today should be less about the formula, but actually about the audience penetration and the frequency. So lots of people ask me how many people should we reach per month, and how many times. So for cold audiences, I recommend 30 to 50% penetration per month, meaning that, yeah, so 30 to 50% of the users in your pool. Again, if you have 40,000, you want to reach 20,000 per month. So 50% per month of this audience pool. And of course, this is part of an audience of a budget calculation, because to reach these people, you need a certain budget. And for warm audiences, it should be 70 to 90% audience penetration per month, right? So called 30 to 50, 70 to 90 for the warm audiences. The warm audiences are usually smaller, so it allows for higher penetration. Also, since they already reacted to something, you can assume they are active users. 100% is unrealistic for the reasons I mentioned before. This 30-day frequency, so how many touch points per user per month. For cold campaigns, I would recommend a maximum frequency per campaign of 4 impressions. Across the whole layer, really 6 to 10 of frequency of total impressions per person per month is a range that I recommend. And with warm audiences, it can be 10 impressions per person per month or even more. Usually 6 to 10 or 8-ish touch points frequency per user per month is what you should aim for, combined with the audience penetration. And as you can see, again, frequency, audience penetration, these things are expensive. And this is why we always tell our clients, you need the money, not because we want you to spend more, but because you need to keep the frequency and audience penetration high. And the bigger your audience, obviously, the more money you need to spend to keep those high. And this is basically why we need money for LinkedIn ads. Per creative asset, it's usually 2.5 to 3 impressions per creative per user is when I see returns declining or results declining. But of course, if the creative still works after 3, a frequency of 3, just keep it running. Don't use those metrics as hard rules, just as an indication. Right. I can probably skip the closer calculations now when it comes to the budget, because we don't have much more time. Though, if you do want to know how this works, I'm happy to, you can just reach out to me and I explain it to you. But probably for the sake of time and your brains. I'll probably skip that now. It is explained very well though in my slides. So
We will put the link to your LinkedIn profile everywhere. So if someone's
yeah,
super curious, they will.
that's the trick. That's the trick. You know, that's why that's why I have such a long presentation. So you have to reach out. Yeah, no, but I want to cover bidding as well. So bidding and campaign settings, which is a little bit easier to understand. I know you talked about manual bidding already, but manual bidding basically covers most cases when it comes to campaign settings or any campaign that you want to do. It's so good that LinkedIn actually hides it from you. As you can see, maximum delivery cost cap, and then manual bidding is underneath here, which doesn't make any sense because manual bidding is just one option. So why hide it? It takes up as much space hiding it than just like leaving it there. When I was at LinkedIn, actually, they wanted to cut it, but then they decided against it because users wanted to keep it. So how to do manual bidding? This looks very complicated. It's really not. You get a when you start your campaign or before you start it, you basically get a recommended bidding from LinkedIn and you get a range of what other advertisers are bidding for, right? So what I would always do is like 30 to 30% below the recommendation of the range, you set your bid, and then you have the campaigns running. If after a couple of days, your daily spend is 95% or more, so basically what we want to do is we want to check if the average daily spend equals the daily budgets within a certain time frame, right? Because if that's too low or too high, we need to adjust the bid. So if it's 95% aroundish or 100%, then we're fine. If you get good results, success. If you don't get good results, then we need to increase the bid by a lot, wait a couple of days, and then see if we get better results. So we can hit the daily budget, but still get bad results because what manual bidding does is it bids for a subset of your audience, right? And that means that you get high frequency but low audience penetration if you bid too low. And if you then increase the bid drastically, then it enables you to reach a different kind of audience and get better results because then you get a different kind of audience. If then still your results are bad and you hit the daily budget and your results are still bad, then it's probably a different problem, maybe content targeting issue, whatever. If you start a campaign and your average daily spend is less than 95%, then you need to check how much of the budget is spent. Again, you want to check what's the daily spend and what's the daily budget. So if that was at like 20 euros instead of 45, my bid is most likely way too low. So then you just increase every couple of days until you reach 95% of the daily spend. And once you reach that, you go check results and then see if they're good or not. And then you know what to do there. Just make sure to not use enable bid adjustments for high clicks. It limits your control. And again, if you get bad results, just make sure to increase the bid by a lot so that you don't only reach a subset of the same people. When it comes to lead generation campaigns, with the lead gen campaign, usually what you do, you bid for leads, but you can also try to bid for clicks because clicks are usually cheaper than leads because everyone bids for leads. And that can enable you to get better like the same results with less money. So for the optimization goal, always try leads or clicks. Make sure that you, of course, analyze the data. And if you're short on budget, can be a good way of actually optimizing it. Maximum delivery. Well, most people don't like it, myself included. It's most likely costing you more money than manual bidding. It optimizes according to LinkedIn maximum ad delivery within your budget, but you will always be charged for impressions. And yeah, it's usually very inefficient. It can work, in my opinion, in combination with thought leader ads and the brand awareness objective. This is for me the only time I use the brand awareness objective and maximum delivery. But for thought leader ads, it can work. Otherwise, I would not really recommend it. You can test it. And you can use it if you're short on time. Say you have to promote a webinar that you hold in 2 weeks. You know what I mean? You don't have much time to figure out the manual bit, and you just like use manual maximum delivery and you go for it, but always keep an eye on the CPM. Cost cap, no one ever talks about it. I actually don't have much experience with it. I don't know anyone who has, because if you don't use manual bidding, which is anyways most of the time, then you do maximum delivery and cost cap. I haven't really had good results with it. I think some people have tried, but I lack the data, to be honest, and I don't know many people with data to speak about cost cap, so I don't recommend it personally. Stick to manual bidding. Right. So last part, campaign settings. Just a little bit of an overview, which campaign objectives I would use per type of audience. And that's really for you to deliver the content or the goal that you have per stage more efficiently, basically, just make sure to not use website conversions. It's actually not working well. It's a more expensive version of website visits, which is insane. But yeah, it's crazy. So just if you want to bring people to your website and you just want to educate them, use website visits. If you want people to sign up for a demo, use website visits. Here's just a little bit of an overview of the different campaign objectives. I like to use engagement a lot for in-feed consumption and building retargeting audiences because you get lots of clicks. Website visits, again, traffic to your website. Video views I like as well, just to generate retargeting audience, but also in-feed consumption if you want to focus on the video metrics. Honestly, engagement is oftentimes the in-between. If you want to drive website visits and video views, it oftentimes works for both, like not as well, but in between. I just recommend testing it. Uh, but these are the ones I like to use a lot. And then lead generation, of course, for the lead generation campaigns and the brand awareness, as I mentioned earlier, can work in combination with TLAs if your goal is reach. So with the thought leader ads, if I want to get reach, what I tend to see are lower CPMs compared to the engagement objective and lower CPMs. Sorry, like higher reach and lower CPMs. So something you might want to test.
One question we have is, what's your experience with working on lead generation? I haven't got any success because CPL is too high.
What's your strategy?
Ah, not my question, so we will have to wait for the follow-up.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about it because that's difficult to answer without having the background information. I can only say for what I like speak for what I see usually is that people just use lead generation without much strategy, right? Say you spend 100% of your money in lead generation. I mean, of course, that will stagnate very quickly and the lead prices will skyrocket just because this is not how it works anymore these days. In 2026, you really need a good content generation, content delivery, and different touch points, as you saw earlier, to really convert the people. And lead generation is part of it, but not all of it. Should we wait for an answer or
Launching an ebook for the cold audience, I guess that's the strategy.
launching an ebook for, well, what do you, I use, yes, so you can use lead generation cold audience 100%. You can definitely test it. I don't know what you consider a high CPL. I would say 70 to 120, 130 euros, for instance, is acceptable. Can be a little bit more as well because it's cold audience. Um, but yeah, of course, the CPL is high because it's cold audience usually. And then it's more about what you do after, right? Do you nurture them after? Do you expect them to convert right away? Like, do you have a nurturing system in place afterwards? Hit me up on LinkedIn. We can have a chat because I need a little bit more information. But again, yes, use it in cold audiences, test it for sure, but don't expect them to convert right away. Nurture them afterwards. And if they're like at 300 euro CPLs, It could be the targeting, it could be so many things. I'd love to give a more specific answer, but I offer you to have a chat with me. Um,
Awesome.
right.
I guess that answers this.
Hopefully. So one last important thing that people talk about a lot, I think, is ad rotation. Should you use optimize for performance or rotate ads evenly? Well, optimize for performance is anyway standard, and it usually optimizes for the highest CTRs. So the creatives in that you have in your campaign, the highest CTRs will be used and get into an auction, basically. So LinkedIn decides it for yourself. If you use rotate ads evenly, then all of the creatives in your campaign have the same chance of taking part in the auction. That does not mean that they will be played out evenly, but they will be part of the auctions evenly. So that means the campaigns will then oftentimes get more expensive because you have to win those auctions, and some creatives that you put in there are just more expensive to like win those auctions, for instance. Mm, right. It's less efficient, rotate ads evenly because of that reason. The algorithm usually finds the creative with the highest CTRs right away and then optimizes for that. So you don't have to do much manually. There are some cases though when you want to use rotate ads evenly. If you have smaller campaigns, like retargeting campaigns with smaller audiences, and you have different creators, we talked about it earlier, you want to nurture them, right, with different messages. So I like to use rotate ads evenly for exactly that, because then I can ensure that the small audience sees the different content pieces that I have and that I nurture them properly. Again, especially if you have less budget and like smaller audiences, that makes a lot of sense. Mm, I also, honestly, I don't think, and I might be polarizing with that, but I don't think optimizing for CTR is always the best you can do. I've seen lead generation campaigns and the algorithm optimized for CTR, but the image with the lower CPL had a worse CTR, but just a way better CPL and got way many more leads. So then if I would not have checked that, and didn't optimize manually a little bit, then we would have optimized for a more expensive CPL, basically, even though the CTR in itself was fine. So me personally, I do like to use rotate ads even more maybe than someone else, but most of the times focus on at some point definitely put it in optimize for performance. Yeah. Audience expansion, we know, don't use that, and LAN, don't use it either. If you want all this information in short, just reach out. I figured I would take a little bit longer, but I have a little bit of an overview for you. And of course, I also do consultations. Here's my QR code for my LinkedIn profile. Add me, reach out. And all the people that I couldn't answer the questions today, just reach out. I'm happy to have a chat with you and we can go into more detail, no problem.
We will put the link to your profile as well in the resource center and everywhere. So if you guys have any questions to Max after watching this live, or if you're watching this on YouTube, you can reach out and he will try to help you.
Lovely.
Lovely. Thank you, Max, for everything. We don't have any more questions and we're a little bit over time. So again, if you guys have any questions, follow up with Max on LinkedIn. And yeah, thank you for everyone who tuned in. And I guess will see a lot of you next week for the final sessions, final week of the bootcamp. All right.
All
Cheers.
right.
Thank
Happy
you.
Friday. Bye bye.